Hello, hello everyone. Thank you, Dimitar, for the introduction. So my name is Oriol. I'm currently based at University College Cork in Ireland, and I will be presenting today the preliminary results of the Observe project, looking at the winter and summer cetacean distribution along the coast of Ireland and offshore waters of Ireland. So basically, this project was done within the Observe program, which is a program funded by the Irish government to conduct a series of aerial surveys of marine megafauna in Irish coastal and offshore waters. The idea is to expand the understanding that we have of marine species in Ireland and also to assess cetacean abundance distribution. To do that, we conducted a combination of broad scales and fine scales aerial surveys. Today, I will only focus on the broad scale surveys. And these were done in two different phases. In 2015 and 2017, we conducted a series of 2 summer surveys and 2 winter surveys. And in 2021-2023, we conducted 2 summer surveys and 1 winter survey. So to do it, basically what we did, we used a fixed wing aircraft flying at 183 meters above the sea surface at a speed of 100 knots, and 2 observers would count all the dolphins and cetaceans seen within 500 meters at each side of the aircraft. Basically, the data that we would be collecting would be the declination angle, the species, the behavior of the species, and the number of individuals. To calculate more or less the area that we had flown, we would take into consideration 2 main aspects: the distance that we had flown, and we would multiply that by the strip width. And to take into consideration the observation effort, we multiplied the distance flown by 1 when both observers were on effort. We multiplied the distance flown by 0.5 when only 1 observer was on effort. And if none of the observers were on effort, we multiplied the distance flown by 0 to not take into account that part of the survey. So the transects that we did, they varied across the years. We distributed the transects in 6 different strata, and we used zigzag transects to monitor the area. In 2015, we didn't monitor the coastal areas of the southwest, the south, and the northwest of Ireland, but these were included in 2016 with zigzag surveys transects as well. And then in the second phase of the project in 2021-2022, we changed to parallel transects to have a better coverage of the coastal areas. In total, more or less about 10,000 kilometers were flown every season except for 2015 because we didn't do coastal surveys, and more or less between 14 to 21 flights were conducted in each season. So to have more or less an idea of the distribution of our effort, we tried to calculate the area surveyed, and for that we used a grid with cells of 50 by 50 kilometers, and we calculated the area that we surveyed in each of these cells. As you can see on the maps, on the left, you have the 2015. There is no survey or there is no effort done in coastal areas, basically because we didn't fly over there. But then in 2016, we incorporated these areas in the surveys, and we can see that the coverage was better in the 2016 season than in the second phase of the Observe. So basically, we found up to more than 15 species of cetaceans, but on this presentation, I will only focus on these groups of species or species. The most abundant ones were probably common dolphins and bottlenose dolphins, and for these next few slides, I will only focus on some of these species to explain a little bit the relative abundance and the distribution of the species in Ireland. So basically, we try to take into account the number of animals seen in each cell divided by the total area surveyed in this cell to know more or less the relative abundance of the species. In the case of the big whales, we grouped all the different species of big whales in one group, and we saw that they were mostly distributed in offshore waters, especially beyond the continental slope or above the continental slope, but they were mainly distributed, or they showed higher relative abundances, especially in the northwest and the southwest of Irish waters. Minke whales, they were mostly distributed along the continental shelf, especially their distribution changed over the years, but we could see that they were made, like the relative abundances were especially important in the southwest coast of Ireland. With common dolphins, we saw a very interesting pattern. They were not very abundant in the first phase of the project in 2015-2016. They were more or less distributed along the continental shelf, but they were not very abundant. But they were the most abundant species in the second phase of the project, distributed more or less throughout the study area, especially above the continental shelf, but also beyond, and being very abundant or showing higher relative abundances, especially in the southwest coast. A similar opposite pattern we found with bottlenose dolphins. They were quite abundant in the first phase of the project, especially on waters on the continental shelf, but they were not as abundant in the second phase of the project, although the distribution kept being on continental shelf waters. We wanted to see also a little bit what was the diversity of the different cetacean species in the area, and to do that we did a combined Shannon diversity index, and we found some areas that showed lower diversity. For example, the ones located to the east coast of Ireland, to the southeast coast of Ireland, and the west coast of Ireland. But we also found some areas that showed higher diversity, especially in those areas linked to the continental slope in the northwest and the southwest coast of Ireland. Looking a little bit at how these species were distributed across the study area, we found that there were some species like the common dolphins or the bottlenose dolphins that they were distributed throughout the study area, especially from shallow waters to also deeper waters. We found that there were also other species like rhesus dolphins or minke whales that showed maybe they were not distributed throughout the study area, but they were found in many different places. Species like the harbor porpoise were linked to quite shallow waters, especially to the east of Ireland, but also to the southeast and southwest of Ireland. And then we found a group of species that were mostly linked to deeper waters, especially big whales and pilot whales, and that would be found along the continental slopes. Fin balanopterids or big baleen whales, they would be found also in deep waters, but maybe in more specific places. And then the sperm whale would be found in deep waters, but only in the northwest and southwest coast of Ireland. Looking a little bit on the trends, to see if there were any seasonal differences between the relative abundance of the species, or if there were any across-year trends, we tried to look a little bit about the total relative abundance of the different species, and we found some interesting aspects. As I was explaining at the beginning, we found that there were two species that were the most abundant in one of the phases. For example, bottlenose dolphins were the most abundant species in the first phase of the OBSERVE project, but then in the second phase of the OBSERVE project in 2021, 2022, they were not as abundant, and the opposite was found with common dolphins that were not very abundant in the first phase of the OBSERVE project, but they were the most abundant species in the second phase of the OBSERVE project. We found some species that their relative abundance was higher in winter than in summer, as for example the big whales or bottlenose dolphins, large whales or long-fin pilot whales. And we also found some species that showed the opposite trend. They were more abundant in summer than in winter. In general, however, we found that there was a general trend for most of the species except for common dolphins, that they showed lower relative abundance in the second phase of the project than compared to the first phase of the project. So basically, with these preliminary results, what we found is that the aerial surveys, they confirm the regular presence of this 9 group of species or species of cetaceans, that the most abundant species are common and bottlenose dolphins, but as I've shown before, they kind of were abundant at different stages of the project, that they are areas of higher diversity, and they are mostly located in the northwest and southwest coast of the study area, but that there are also seasonal differences in abundance and also across the years. So the future work that we have to do from now on is to look into this seasonal and across-year differences to find out a little bit more why this is happening, or to try to find out why this is happening, and also to assess the areas of importance for the species to be used for informed conservation management. And with that, I would like to thank all the people that contributed to the project. There's a lot of people that contributed throughout these 4 seasons of data collection and also data analysis. And to thank you all for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.